The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying the most elite warriors from across the Galactic Coalition. Inside the passenger bay, 3 alien soldiers sat in meditation, preparing their minds and bodies for the challenge ahead. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. The Species Integration Exchange program accepted only the best, and they were determined to prove their worth. Velthar checked his armor plating for the 100th time. He came from a high-gravity world where the atmosphere pressed down like an ocean. His people were born into pressure that would crush most species, and they grew strong because of it. He had won 63 combat tournaments without a single defeat. When the invitation arrived, his commanders called it the greatest honor their world had ever received. Beside him, Quinara floated in her meditation sphere. Her species possessed telepathic abilities that allowed them to process hundreds of thoughts at once. She could predict enemy movements before they happened and coordinate entire battalions with her mind alone. She had graduated top of her class in strategic warfare. The Mindweaver Collective spent 3 years preparing her for this program. Across from them sat Bront, and he was massive even by his species standards. The Krasnians had never lost a war in 3,000 years. Their berserker warriors were legendary across 40 star systems. Bront could bend steel with his bare hands and had survived wounds that would kill any other being. His warlord told him to bring honor to their people and show the galaxy what true strength meant. The ship landed at the facility in the Korean mountains. The doors opened and the 3 warriors stepped out in full ceremonial armor. Military bands played. Cameras flashed. Diplomats gave speeches about unity and cooperation. This was a historic moment, they said. The first time Earth would train alongside the galaxy's finest. Then Daejung arrived. He came on a bus from Seoul. He wore his standard uniform and carried a rolling suitcase with a broken wheel that made a clicking sound. Under his other arm, he balanced 3 plastic containers stacked carefully on top of each other. A small rice cooker dangled from his backpack. Velthar watched this human approach and felt confused. Where was his armor? Where was his weapon? Where was his support team? Every warrior brought their personal equipment. This human looked like he was going on vacation. The instructor, a scarred veteran named Thexal, called them to attention. He explained the program rules in the common galactic language. They would train together for 3 months. They would learn from each other. They would build bonds between their worlds. He spoke about honor and duty and the responsibilities they carried as representatives of their species. Daejung listened politely while wondering if the cafeteria would have a refrigerator for his kimchi. His grandmother had made it specially for this trip, and it would spoil if he left it out. He hoped they had rice here too. The rice cooker was good, but you still needed decent rice to start with. After the ceremony, they gathered in the common area. Velthar approached Daejung first. He wanted to establish dominance early, as was his culture's way. He stood at his full height, his armor gleaming. I am Velthar, undefeated champion of the Gailean War Games. My armor has turned aside plasma fire. My strength can crush stone. What are your credentials, human? Daejung looked up from unpacking his containers. He smiled politely. Oh, hello. I'm Daejung. I passed basic training last year. I'm pretty okay at the obstacle courses, I guess. Do you like spicy food? Velthar blinked. This had to be a test. Humans were known for their strange sense of humor. This must be some kind of warrior's humility, a way of concealing true power until the moment to strike. He had read about such tactics. Quinara decided to probe deeper. She extended her telepathic senses toward Daejung's mind, expecting to find complex battle strategies or hidden pain from terrible wars. Instead, she found him thinking about whether he brought enough side dishes and hoping the training schedule would not interfere with proper mealtimes. There was no deception in his thoughts. He genuinely cared more about his lunch than about impressing them. This confused her deeply. Bront laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. The human makes jokes. I like this. We will be friends, small warrior. When the training begins, we will see who laughs last. Daejung nodded agreeably. Sure, I'm looking forward to it. It will be nice to train with people from other worlds. Oh, would you like some kimchi? I have extra. That evening, they received their training schedules. Velthar studied his with growing excitement. Morning runs, combat drills, weapons training, survival exercises. This was what he had prepared for. He would show these humans what a true warrior could do. Quinara analyzed every detail, creating mental simulations of each exercise. She calculated optimal performance strategies and began preparing her body for the challenges ahead. Bront simply grinned. Finally worthy opponents. Finally a chance to test himself against Earth's legendary warriors. Daejung glanced at the schedule and shrugged. It looked pretty similar to his regular training back at his unit. The wake-up time was actually 30 minutes later than usual, which was nice. He marked on his calendar which days he would make soup and which days would be better for rice dishes. The cafeteria had a hot plate he could use, the staff confirmed. Perfect. That night, the 3 alien warriors barely slept. They meditated, stretched, prepared mentally for the ordeal ahead. They knew Earth's reputation. Humans had expanded across their solar system through sheer determination. They survived on a death world with extreme weather, dangerous animals, and gravity that would cripple most species. To train with them would be the greatest test of their lives. Daejung slept fine. He dreamed about his family's restaurant back home and the way his mother made kimchi jjigae with just the right amount of gochugaru. He woke up refreshed and ready for breakfast. The next morning they assembled at dawn. The air was cold and thin. The mountains rose around them, peaks still covered in snow. Instructor Thexal stood before them in his combat suit. Welcome to Earth's integrated combat facility. Today we begin with a simple warm-up, a 10-kilometer run through the mountain path. Nothing too difficult for your first day. Fall out. The group began to jog. Within 100 meters, Velthar felt something wrong. Each step required enormous effort. His legs moved as if trapped in thick mud. The gravity here was listed as 1.2 G with their weighted training vests, which should have been manageable, but this was different. This was crushing. Quinara's meditation sphere had compensated for gravity differences during space travel. Now running on her own legs, she felt her muscles screaming. Every breath was labor. How did anything survive in this pressure? Bront pushed forward through sheer stubbornness. He was Krasnian. He did not quit. But his vision started to blur. His species was powerful but had evolved on a lighter world. This gravity was punishment. Daejung jogged alongside them, keeping an easy pace. He noticed they seemed to be struggling a bit. Are you guys okay? We can slow down if you need to. It's just a warm-up. Velthar wanted to snap back with a proud reply. He managed only a wheeze. Daejung took that as a yes and continued his pace. He was actually going slower than normal because he did not want to make the new people feel bad on their first day. The instructor had mentioned they should be supportive and welcoming. After 5 kilometers, Quinara collapsed. Her telepathic abilities were useless when her brain could barely get enough oxygen. The medical team picked her up. At 7 kilometers, Bront's legs gave out. He had never quit anything in his life. Today, his body made the choice for him. Velthar made it to 8 kilometers before his armor became too heavy to carry. He fell to his knees, gasping. Daejung finished the run and came back to check on them. Hey, are you sure you guys are feeling all right? Maybe you're jet-lagged from the space travel? The medics assured him the aliens would recover. It was just adjustment period. Daejung nodded and headed back to the barracks. He had a thermos of miyakuk waiting and seaweed soup was best enjoyed warm. Instructor Thexal watched from his observation post and made a note in his report. The aliens were struggling with Day 1 basics. This was going to be a long 3 months. He just hoped they would not quit before the real training started. In the medical bay, Velthar, Quinara, and Bront lay recovering. They had the same thought, though none spoke it aloud yet. If this was a warm-up, what would the actual training be like? And more importantly, how was that human so completely unaffected? Daejung, meanwhile, was heating up his soup and thinking about whether tomorrow would be a good day to make pajun. The forecast said it might rain, and pancakes were always better on rainy days. The second day started at 5 in the morning. The alarm echoed through the barracks like a scream. Velthar dragged himself from his bunk. Every muscle in his body felt like fire. His species was famous for recovering quickly from injury, but this was different. This was not injury. This was just existing on Earth, and his body hated it. Quinara had barely slept. She kept her telepathic senses dimmed because using them required energy she did not have. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alone inside her own mind. The gravity pressed down on her thoughts themselves. Bront groaned as he stood. Back home, he could lift a ground transport vehicle over his head. Here, he struggled to lift his own arms. This world was fighting him, and he was losing. They stumbled to the morning formation. The cold mountain air bit at their skin. Instructor Thexal stood waiting, looking far too alert for such an early hour. Good morning. Today we continue with basic conditioning. Push-ups, sit-ups, and combat drills. Standard procedure. Velthar positioned himself on the ground. Push-ups were simple. He had done millions of them. But as he lowered himself down, the ground seemed to pull at him like a magnet. His arms shook. He managed 10 before his strength gave out. 10. He had once done 5,000 in an hour. Now 10 was his limit. Quinara attempted the exercise, but her arms collapsed immediately. Her species relied on telepathy and strategy. Physical strength was not their focus. But even accounting for that, this was humiliating. She could not do a single proper push-up. Bront roared and threw himself into the workout. He would not be defeated by simple exercises. He managed 50 before his arms refused to obey anymore. 50 was pathetic by Krasnian standards. Children could do more than that. Daijung finished his set of 200 and sat waiting for the next exercise. He noticed the others had stopped. "Are you guys taking a break already?" "That's smart. Pacing yourself is important." Velthar looked at this human with something approaching horror. 200. In this gravity, without even breathing hard. What kind of training had this species developed? The morning continued with more exercises. Each one revealed the same pattern. The alien struggled and failed. Daejung completed everything with the same calm expression he might have while washing dishes. When the break finally came, Daejung pulled out his lunch containers. He had made bibimbap today, with carefully arranged vegetables in separate sections, gochujang sauce in a small container on the side. He mixed it all together and began eating with evident satisfaction. The aliens lay on the ground around him, too exhausted to move. The smell of sesame oil and spices filled the air. "Do you want some?" Daejung offered, holding out his container. "I always make extra." Bront managed to reach out and take a piece of the seasoned beef. He chewed slowly. It was delicious, which somehow made everything worse. How could someone cook like this and also be a perfect soldier? Where did he find the energy for both? Quinara gathered her remaining strength and reached out with her telepathy toward Daejung. She needed to understand. She needed to find the source of his power, the secret technique that let him endure while they suffered. She found his thoughts easily. He was thinking about the bibimbap. Specifically, whether he should have added more vegetables. Also, he was wondering if the spinach was seasoned enough. Maybe needed more garlic next time. His grandmother always said you could never have too much garlic. That was it. No secret technique. No pain suppression meditation. Just thoughts about garlic. Quinara withdrew from his mind and lay back down. She did not understand. She did not understand at all. After lunch, they moved to combat training. The instructor Thexal demonstrated basic hand-to-hand techniques. Blocks, strikes, throws. Simple movements that any soldier should know. Pair up and practice. 3 rounds, 5 minutes each. Velthar partnered with Daejung. Finally, a chance to prove himself. Combat was universal. Strength and technique would matter here more than endurance. He took his stance, a defensive position his masters had spent years perfecting. Daejung bowed politely and took his own stance. It was simple, practical, nothing fancy. They began. Velthar attacked first. A probing strike to test the human's reflexes. Daejung blocked it casually. Velthar followed with a combination his opponents never saw coming. Daejung stepped aside and the attacks hit only air. They continued for 5 minutes. Velthar used every technique he knew. Daejung defended against all of them without seeming to try very hard. When the round ended, Velthar was gasping for air. Daejung looked mildly warmed up. "You're really good," Daejung said honestly. "Your technique is very precise. You must have trained a lot." Velthar did not know how to respond. He had trained his entire life, and he could not touch this human who considered himself average. Bront faced one of the human assistant instructors, a woman named Su-Jin who looked small even by human standards. He was careful not to hurt her. His people valued honor, and harming a weaker opponent was shameful. 30 seconds later, Bront was on his back wondering what happened. Su-Jin helped him up with a smile. "Good effort. Your stance is very strong. Try to watch for low attacks more." She had thrown him. She had actually thrown him. No one threw Krasnians. They were too heavy, too strong. Yet this small human woman had tossed him like a training dummy. The afternoon brought gas mask drills. They had to run obstacle courses while wearing protective equipment. The masks restricted breathing and vision. The course included walls to climb, trenches to cross, and barriers to crawl under. Quinara made it halfway through before she had to stop. The mask pressed against her face and she could not get enough air. The panic rose in her chest. The medical team cleared her off the course. Velthar and Bront pushed further through sheer determination. But determination only carried them so far. They finished the course but collapsed at the end, ripping off their masks and gasping. Daejung completed the course at a steady jog. He had done this drill hundreds of times. Once, during winter training, they had done it in a snowstorm. That had been challenging. Today was actually quite nice. That evening, the three aliens held a private meeting in Velthar's quarters. They needed to talk about what was happening. "This cannot be normal," Velthar said. His voice was quiet, almost broken. No species trains like this as a standard. It must be their elite program. Daejung must be one of their best warriors pretending to be ordinary. Quinara shook her head. "I have been in his mind. There is no pretense. He truly believes he is average. He thinks of himself as just a regular soldier. Then maybe all humans are like this," Bront suggested. "Maybe their entire species is made of warriors." "I checked his file," Quinara continued. "Before this program, he was stationed at something called the DMZ. I looked up what that means. It stands for Demilitarized Zone. It is the border between two parts of Korea that are technically still at war. Humans station their soldiers there for months at a time in constant readiness. Daejung spent 18 months there before coming here. He considers it boring duty." The room fell silent. They let that information sink in. Humans put their regular soldiers on the border of an active conflict zone and considered it boring. They trained their average troops to a level that exceeded the galaxy's elite. "What are their special forces like?" Velthar asked quietly. No one wanted to answer that question. Bront stood up and looked out the window. The mountains stretched into the distance, beautiful and deadly. My people have a saying. The strongest warrior is the one who does not need to prove it. We thought it was about confidence, about inner peace. But maybe it means something else. He turned back to his companions. Maybe the strongest warrior is the one who sees war as just another job, who can fight and then sit down and eat lunch without any change in his heart. We train to become weapons. Humans train to stay human, even while being weapons. That is why we cannot match them. Quinara considered this. "So what do? We learn," Velthar said. "We adapt. We survive, and we make sure our people understand what humans really are before anyone makes the mistake of fighting them." They agreed and returned to their quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. They needed rest. In his room, Daejung was writing an email to his mother. He told her about the nice aliens he had met. The big one liked her bulgogi recipe. The telepathic one was interested in learning about kimchi fermentation. The armored one seemed very serious, but was probably nice once you got to know him. He mentioned the training was going well. Nothing too difficult. The weather was nice. He missed home, but the program would be over in a few months. He signed off with love and clicked send. Then he checked his recipe notes for tomorrow. He was thinking of making kimchi jjigae. The weather was getting colder and hot stew would be good for everyone. Maybe it would help the aliens feel better. They seemed tired lately. Daejung set his alarm and went to sleep. Another day of training tomorrow. He hoped they would do the obstacle course again. That one was fun. Week 2 arrived with new challenges. The aliens had started adapting to Earth's gravity. Their bodies were learning, slowly, how to function in this heavy world. They could finish the morning run now, even if they finished last. They could do 50 push-ups instead of 10. Progress was progress. Then Instructor Thexal announced the survival exercise. You will spend 5 days in the Taebaek Mountains. Each of you will be alone. You must find 3 markers we have placed in the wilderness and return to base. You will have basic survival gear and 1 day of food. The temperature will drop to -15°C at night. Any questions? Velthar raised his hand. What dangerous animals live in these mountains? Wild boar, Asian black bears. Nothing you cannot handle if you stay alert and follow safety protocols. Your emergency beacon will bring help if you truly need it. The aliens exchanged glances. They had trained for combat. They had trained for war. But surviving alone in a hostile wilderness was different. Still, they had come too far to quit now. They received their equipment. A basic survival kit with fire-starting tools, water purification tablets, a thermal blanket, and a knife. 1 day of rations that looked depressingly small. A map and compass. The emergency beacon. Daejung checked his gear with practiced ease. He had done this before during his basic training. 5 days was actually pretty comfortable. He packed an extra pair of socks because his grandmother always said dry feet were important. He also snuck in a small container of gochujang because plain food got boring. They were dropped at different locations in the mountains. Velthar found himself alone in a forest that seemed too quiet. Snow covered the ground in a thick blanket. The trees rose around him like prison bars. He had studied wilderness survival in theory. Now he needed to apply it. He built a shelter using branches and his thermal blanket. It took 3 hours and looked terrible. The cold wind still cut through the gaps. He managed to start a fire after many attempts. The fire-starting tool was simple, but his hands shook from cold and exhaustion. By nightfall, he was huddled by his weak fire, eating half of his rations because he was so hungry. The temperature dropped. The cold was not like his homeworld's cold. This cold was wet and alive. It crawled inside his armor and settled into his bones. He lasted 2 days. On the second night, his joints began freezing. The moisture in the air condensed on his armor and turned to ice. He could not move properly. His fire had died because he had fallen asleep. When he woke, he was shivering so hard he could not stand. He pressed the emergency beacon. The shame burned hotter than any fire, but he wanted to live more than he wanted pride. Quinara tried a different approach. She used her telepathy to sense the locations of the markers. If she could find them all quickly, she could call for extraction and minimize her time in this frozen hell. But maintaining telepathy required energy. Keeping her body warm required energy. Moving through the deep snow required energy. She had to choose where to spend her limited resources. She found the first marker on day 1. Victory felt hollow when she was so cold she could barely think. She built a shelter poorly. Her fire was weak. She rationed her food carefully, but hunger gnawed at her anyway. On day 3, she tried to locate the second marker with her powers. The effort drained her completely. She found the marker but collapsed in the snow afterward. Her body temperature dropped rapidly. The cold wrapped around her mind and pulled her toward darkness. She pressed her beacon. The rescue team found her hypothermic but alive. They told her she had done well to call when she did. Another hour and it might have been too late. Bront pushed himself harder than he had ever pushed before. He was Krasnian. His people did not surrender. He would complete this trial or die trying. He built a strong shelter. He started a roaring fire. He caught fish from a frozen stream by breaking the ice and grabbing them with his bare hands. He was proud of himself. He was surviving, but he had not calculated his caloric needs correctly. His massive body required enormous amounts of food to function. The 1 day of rations was nowhere near enough. The fish helped, but not enough. By day 4, he was burning through his own body mass, trying to stay warm and mobile. His hands started shaking. His thoughts became fuzzy. He knew these signs. His body was eating itself to survive. He had pushed too hard for too long. On day 4, he found the second marker but could not remember where the third one was. He looked at his map, but the symbols made no sense. Everything was becoming unclear. He pressed his beacon. He told himself it was tactical wisdom, not weakness. A dead warrior was useless. The rescue team airlifted him out. They fed him hot soup and wrapped him in heated blankets. He had lost dangerous amounts of weight in just 4 days. Daejung started his 5 days with a simple plan. First, find a good location. He walked for 2 hours until he found a spot near a stream with good tree coverage and a natural windbreak from the rocks. He built his shelter properly the way they had taught him in basic training. He used pine branches in layers to insulate against the cold. He dug the floor slightly below ground level where it was warmer. He built a small fire pit with rocks arranged to reflect heat into the shelter. His fire was small but efficient. He did not need a bonfire. He just needed consistent warmth. He collected enough wood for several days and stored it where it would stay dry. He purified water from the stream. He caught fish using a simple trap made from branches. He found edible plants he recognized from his mountain training. Pine nuts, wild vegetables that survived the cold, even some mushrooms. On day 2, he located the first marker. On day 3, he found the second and third markers. He had completed the objective. The rules said he could call for pickup now. But Daejung looked around at the quiet mountains and made a decision. It was peaceful here. No drills, no schedule. Just him and nature. The base was crowded and noisy. He had been stationed at the DMZ for over a year, sharing tight quarters with his unit constantly. This was the first time in months he had been truly alone. He decided to stay for the remaining 2 days. It was nice. He caught more fish. He found wild ginseng, which was valuable and also good for soup. He practiced his knot tying. He repaired some of his gear that had minor damage. He thought about his family and what he would do when his service ended. At night, he sat by his fire and looked at the stars. They were the same stars he had watched as a child. The same stars soldiers had watched for thousands of years. It felt connected to something larger than himself. On day 5, he packed up his shelter carefully. He made sure his fire was completely out. He left no trace of his presence except some cut branches that would decompose naturally. He walked back to the pickup point, arriving exactly on time. The medical team checked him over. They were confused. He had not lost weight. He had actually gained a little. His vitals were perfect. He looked rested. "How are you feeling?" The medic asked. "Good." The mountains were beautiful, very peaceful. "Any problems? Injuries, close calls with wildlife?" "No, nothing like that. I saw a deer on day 3. It was nice." The medic made notes that did not make sense. This soldier had thrived in conditions that had broken alien warriors. He seemed to view the survival exercise as a vacation. Instructor Thexal reviewed all the data when they returned to base. The aliens had struggled exactly as expected. Humans from low-gravity worlds always had trouble with extreme cold and physical demands. Their performance was actually quite good considering. Then he looked at Daejung's file. The tracker data showed optimal movement patterns, perfect resource management, textbook survival protocols, and the soldier had stayed extra days by choice. Thexal pulled up Daejung's previous assignment records. DMZ Border Patrol, 18 months in one of the most tense military zones on Earth. Before that, mountain warfare training in these same mountains. Before that, standard conscription service. This was not even special forces. This was just regular service. Every Korean male did this. Millions of humans went through similar training. They complained about it. They made jokes about it. They wrote funny songs about how boring it was. Thexal had seen a lot in his career. He had trained warriors from dozens of species, but he had never seen anything like humans. They did not think of themselves as warriors. They were just doing their mandatory service and counting the days until they could go home. That somehow made them more dangerous than any warrior culture in the galaxy. When everyone had recovered, Daejung made his promised samgyetang. He had asked the base kitchen for a whole chicken, ginseng, rice, and jujubes. They gave him everything he needed, curious about what he would make. He prepared the soup carefully, stuffing the chicken with rice and ginseng, simmering it for hours until the meat fell off the bone. The smell filled the common area, rich, herbal, comforting. The aliens gathered to watch him cook. They were learning that Daejung's cooking was an event. He hummed while he worked, completely focused but also relaxed. "My mother taught me this recipe," he explained while checking the soup. "She said a soldier who cannot cook for himself cannot take care of his unit. Food is important. It keeps you connected to home." He served the soup in bowls. The aliens tried it cautiously. It was delicious. The warmth spread through their bodies. The ginseng had a sharp, earthy taste that felt energizing. Month 2 brought changes. The aliens had adapted significantly. Their bodies had grown accustomed to Earth's gravity. They could complete the morning runs without collapsing. They could do proper push-ups now, even if they could not match Daejung's numbers. They were proud of their progress. Instructor Thexal noticed the improvement. They were becoming real soldiers by galactic standards. By human standards, they were reaching basic competency. He decided they were ready for the next phase. "Today we begin urban combat training. You will enter a mock city filled with training bots that simulate civilians and hostiles. Your mission is to rescue hostages from a fortified position. You have 6 hours to plan and execute your operation." The training facility had a full mock city. Buildings, streets, vehicles, everything. The bots moved with realistic patterns. Some were programmed as civilians going about daily life. Others were hostile forces holding the hostages. The soldiers would need to identify targets, minimize civilian casualties, and complete the objective. The 3 aliens gathered to plan. They had learned to work together over the past weeks. Their different skills could complement each other if used correctly. Velthar laid out the tactical map. "I will lead the direct assault. My armor can take incoming fire and draw their attention." Quinara studied the building layouts. "I will use telepathy to locate the hostages and identify which bots are hostile. This will give us an advantage. Bront cracked his knuckles. I will breach the fortified positions. Once Velthar draws their fire, I can break through their defenses. They spent 6 hours creating an elaborate plan. Timing sequences, backup strategies, communication protocols. They felt confident. This was what they trained for. This was combat, not just endurance. Daejong watched their planning session with interest. They were very thorough. He thought about his own approach, but did not want to interrupt their work. They seemed excited about it. As they finalized their plan, Daejong checked his watch. Instructor? Can I do my run first? I need to finish before lunch. I'm making doenjang jjigae today and it needs to simmer for 2 hours. The aliens stopped planning and looked at him. He wanted to go before them? Did he not need time to plan? Instructor Thexel shrugged. Fine. You have 45 minutes. Go. Daejong bowed politely and entered the mock city. The aliens moved to the observation deck to watch. They were curious about what the human would do without a plan. The scenario started. Daejong moved into the city streets. Civilian bots walked around him. He moved calmly, not rushing. He picked up a newspaper from a bot vendor and pretended to read it while walking. To any observer, he looked like just another civilian. Velthar leaned forward. What is he doing? He is not even hiding. He is hiding by not hiding, Quinara said slowly. He is using the civilians as concealment. Daejong moved through the crowd naturally. He turned corners when the crowd turned. He stopped at a cafe bot and ordered something, using the moment to scan the upper windows. His face showed polite interest, nothing more. There, Quinara pointed at the screen. He just identified 3 hostile positions. Look at his eyes. They watched more carefully. Daejong's body language remained casual, but his eyes were constantly moving, cataloging, analyzing. He was gathering intelligence while appearing completely harmless. He approached the target building. Still no weapons drawn. He walked up to the entrance like he belonged there. A hostile bot challenged him. Daejong responded in Korean, sounding confused and lost. The bot hesitated, trying to process the foreign language. That moment of hesitation was all Daejong needed. He moved. The aliens had seen him fight in training. They thought they knew what he could do. They were wrong. In training, he had been holding back to be a good partner. Now he was not holding back. The hostile bot went down in 2 seconds. Daejong had its weapon before it hit the ground. He moved into the building like water flowing downhill. Every motion was efficient. No wasted energy. No unnecessary movements. He cleared rooms with smooth precision. When hostiles appeared, he neutralized them instantly. His face showed the same expression he had when chopping vegetables for soup. This was just a task to complete. Bront watched in silence. He had thought humans fought with passion, with aggression, but Daejong fought with the emotional investment of someone washing dishes. It was just work. This is terrifying, Velthar whispered. He feels nothing. No, Quinara corrected. She had her telepathy extended, reading Daejong's thoughts. He feels things. Right now he is thinking about whether he added enough soybean paste to the jjigae. He is also thinking he should have brought backup bandages, and he is mildly annoyed that this is taking longer than expected. He is fighting and thinking about soup? Bront could not believe it. He is not fighting. He is working. For him, this is the same as any other job. Daejong located the hostages, 2 bots programmed to act scared and injured. He cleared the room, secured the hostages, and began escorting them out. A hostile bot appeared in the hallway. Daejong put himself between the bot and the hostages, neutralized the threat, and continued moving. He brought the hostages to the extraction point. 18 minutes total, 0 civilian casualties, all hostiles neutralized, clean execution. He exited the scenario and bowed to Instructor Thexel. Thank you. I will go start the soup now. Thexel reviewed the footage. Acceptable performance. Standard urban combat protocols. Score of 87%. You took 3 seconds too long on the second floor. Yes, sir. I will work on that. Daejong left to start cooking. The aliens remained in the observation deck, processing what they had seen. Standard protocols, Velthar repeated. That was standard. Instructor Thexel noticed they were still there. Is there a problem? What score would your special forces get on this exercise? Quinara asked. Thexel pulled up a file. Special warfare units require a minimum of 95% for qualification. They train in actual cities with real civilians present, using simulation rounds. They need to be perfect because mistakes in real operations cost lives. The aliens absorbed this. Humans practiced warfare in their own cities, with their own people walking around. They normalized it to the point where civilians just accepted soldiers training among them. You can still run your operation, Thexol said. You planned well. Go show what you can do. They ran their operation. It took them 3 hours. They succeeded but made mistakes. Civilian casualties were higher than acceptable. Their coordination was good but not great. They scored 68%. They were disappointed but not surprised. They had watched perfection earlier. They knew what the standard actually was. After debriefing, they found Daejung in the common area. He had set up his portable stove and a large pot of stew was bubbling away. The rich smell of fermented soybean filled the room. He was adding tofu cubes and sliced zucchini. The doenjang is really important, he explained to Quinara, who had given up trying to understand human combat abilities and now just wanted to learn about food. My family makes our own. It ferments for 3 years. That is what gives it the deep flavor. He tasted the soup and nodded. Almost ready. The key is to not boil it too hard. Just a gentle simmer. Bront sat down heavily. He needed to ask the question that had been bothering him since the exercise. Daejung, how are you so calm? After what we did today? After the violence? How do you just cook soup? Daejung looked genuinely confused by the question. It was just a training exercise. Why would I be stressed? The real stress was worrying I did not buy enough tofu. But the fighting, the decisions, the pressure. It is just training, Daejung said gently. Real combat is different, I am sure. But this is practice. Like practicing taekwondo forms. You do it, you learn, you move on. Getting emotional about practice does not help. Felt I realized something. You separated it. In your mind. Combat is one thing. The rest of your life is another thing. You do not let them mix. I guess so, Daejung said. He had never really thought about it. My instructors always said to stay professional. Do your job well, but do not take it home with you. A soldier needs to be able to fight, but also needs to be able to live. Both are important. He served the soup. Each bowl had tofu, vegetables, mushrooms, and the rich brown broth. He handed them out with a smile. Eat, you worked hard today. This will help you feel better. They ate in silence. The soup was delicious and comforting. The warmth spread through their bodies. That night, the aliens accessed Earth's public databases again. They had been researching human culture and military history. What they found continued to disturb them. Mandatory military service in multiple nations. Millions of trained soldiers at any given time. Military service so common that humans wrote comedy shows about it. Soldiers complaining about training being boring. Veterans casually mentioning their service like it was just another job they had. Quinara compiled a report for the Mindweaver Collective. She chose her words carefully. We believed we were training with Earth's warriors. We were wrong. We trained with Earth's general population. Their actual warriors are something else entirely. I recommend we never find out what. She attached video of Daejung's urban combat exercise. She added his scores. She noted that this was considered standard performance. The final month arrived faster than anyone expected. The aliens had transformed during their time on Earth. They could run the morning 10 kilometers without stopping. They could do 200 push-ups, even if it took them longer than the humans. They had adapted to the gravity and the training. They were proud of how far they had come. Instructor Thexol announced the final exercise. A 3-day war game, aliens versus humans. Full tactical scenario with objectives to capture and defend. This would test everything they had learned. The alien team would consist of Velthar, Quinara, and Bront, plus military advisors from their homeworlds who had arrived for the closing ceremony. They brought proper equipment and weapons. They had access to their species' advanced technology. They spent a week planning their strategy. The human team would be Daejung and his regular unit who had come to see him graduate. 5 soldiers total. Standard Korean military equipment. No special preparation. Daejung was happy to see his unit again. His squad leader Hyunwoo had been hiking every weekend to stay in shape. Jisoo, who handled communications, had been swimming competitively. Taeyang the medic still practiced taekwondo. Sua the marksman had won another archery championship. They were all just regular soldiers finishing their mandatory service. They caught up over dinner, making ramyeon and complaining about the cold weather. They played cards and told jokes. They seemed completely unconcerned about the upcoming war game. The night before the exercise, the aliens held final strategy meetings. They had studied human tactics extensively. They knew about asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and psychological operations. They were ready. The human squad spent the evening the same way they spent every evening. They made food, played games, and went to sleep at a reasonable hour. Daejung set his alarm and thought about whether they should pack extra socks. The war game began at dawn. The playing area covered 50 square kilometers of mountain terrain. Multiple objectives scattered across the map. The team that controlled the most objectives after 3 days would win. The alien coalition moved out in formation. They had sensors, drones, and Quinara's telepathy to locate the enemy. They used proper military procedures, established secure communications, and moved with tactical precision. The humans disappeared. By hour 6, the aliens had captured 3 objectives without resistance. No sign of human forces anywhere. The sensors showed nothing. Quinara extended her telepathy but found no mines in the area. Where are they? Velthar asked. I do not know, Quinara admitted. Either they are beyond my range or they are masking their presence somehow. The alien advisors suggested the humans had retreated to plan. This was a victory. They pressed forward to secure more objectives. Then the attacks began. A supply depot exploded. By the time reinforcements arrived, the attackers were gone. Only the burning supplies remained. A command post went dark. The guards were found unconscious with training markers on them. No one had seen anything. Sentries on watch reported movement, opened fire, and found nothing. The humans were ghosts. By the end of day 1, the aliens held 7 objectives but had lost most of their supplies and had multiple casualties from ambushes. They never saw the enemy clearly, just shadows and movement and then nothing. Instructor Thexal watched from the command center. He had seen this before. The aliens were running a military operation. The humans were living in the field. There was a fundamental difference. Day 2 brought frustration. The aliens tightened security. They established proper perimeters. They used their technology to maximum effect. It did not matter. The humans hit them when they moved. Ambushes in the forest, snipers from impossible distances, traps that showed intimate knowledge of the terrain. Every time the aliens responded, the humans were already gone. Bront led a patrol that got separated from the main force. They were harassed for 6 hours by an enemy they never saw clearly. When they finally regrouped, they were exhausted and demoralized. Velthar recognized the pattern. They are not fighting us. We are just obstacles in their environment. They are treating this entire operation like a camping trip where we happen to be in the way. Quinara finally managed to locate one of the human minds. She found Jisoo, the communications specialist. Jisoo was thinking about whether the fish she caught that morning would be good for lunch, and whether they had enough rice. They were fishing. During a war game, they were actually fishing. They are not stressed, Quinara reported. They are just existing out there, moving, eating, sleeping, and occasionally attacking us when convenient. The alien advisors could not believe it. This was a war game. Where was the tension? Where was the combat mentality? Instructor Thexal explained it to them that evening. You are fighting. They are doing their job. That is the difference. For them, this is just another training exercise. They have done hundreds of these. It is as normal as eating breakfast. On day 3, the humans allowed themselves to be located, not because they made mistakes, but because the exercise needed to end and they were being polite about it. The final confrontation happened at dawn. The aliens had fortified their position. They had superior numbers and technology. They were ready for a proper battle. The humans attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. The fight was brief and professional. The humans pressed hard enough to be respectful, but were clearly holding back. They could have won on day 1 if they wanted to. When the ceasefire sounded, the aliens stood exhausted and amazed. The humans immediately started making camp and preparing food. Daejung pulled out a portable stove and ingredients. Instructor said we could use the kitchen supplies. I brought stuff for jjajangmyeon. Does anyone want some? He was making noodles. After 3 days of tactical operations, he was just making noodles like it was a normal day. The graduation ceremony was held a week later. All participants received commendations for completing Earth's standard military training protocols. Families attended. Diplomats gave speeches. It was a formal affair. Velthar was asked to give a speech on behalf of the alien participants. He had thought carefully about what to say. I came to Earth as one of my species' finest warriors. I believed I understood combat and strength. I was wrong. Humans do not have warriors. They have soldiers who happen to be everyone. We train our best for war. You train everyone for life, and war is just part of it. That is something we can never match. He bowed to Daejung and the human instructors. Thank you for teaching us humility and showing us true strength. Quinara added her own thoughts. I spent months trying to understand the human mindset. I finally succeeded during the war game. I asked Daejung what he was thinking during a tactical operation. He said he was worried the black bean paste might spoil in the heat. He was managing combat and meal preparation simultaneously. That is when I understood. Humans do not have a combat mode. You are always yourselves, and that self just happens to be terrifyingly capable. Bront simply said, "My people have conquered many worlds. We would not conquer Earth. I am grateful to call you allies." When Daejung was asked to speak, he seemed embarrassed. Public speaking was not his strength. I am grateful for this experience. I made friends from across the galaxy. I hope I represented my country well, though I am sure any soldier from my unit would have done better. Thank you for training with me. Instructor Thexel interrupted. That is exactly the point, soldier. Any of you would have done just as well. That is what makes you special. You do not realize you are special. The ceremony concluded with formal farewells. Each alien participant said goodbye to Daejung personally. Bront clasped his shoulder. I will tell songs of your strength. Velthar bowed deeply. You have my respect, warrior. Quinara smiled. I still do not fully understand you, but I am very glad you are an ally and not an enemy. Daejung handed them each a wrapped package. I packed some gochugaru and doenjang for you. The instructions are inside. They are in English, so you should be able to read them. Stay in touch. Korean chili flakes and fermented soybean paste, with handwritten recipes. That was his goodbye gift. After the ceremony, each species submitted reports to the Galactic Coalition. The Xylene High Command wrote, recommend humans for all coalition combat operations. Also recommend never provoking them. They view warfare as routine, like eating or sleeping. This psychological framework makes them extremely dangerous. The Mindweaver Collective reported, humans possess no special powers yet achieve supernatural results through systematic competence. They normalize hardship to a degree we cannot match. Maintain alliance at all costs. The Krasnian War Council stated simply, we have conquered 400 worlds in our history. We would not attempt to conquer Earth. Recommend eternal friendship. The Coalition Command made their decision. Exchange program successful. Human training protocols effective. Note, future programs will have separate difficulty tiers. Multiple species have requested modified human light training options. Earth has agreed to develop adjusted programs. Standard Earth military training reclassified from intermediate to extreme hardship tier. Daejung returned to his regular unit. His commanding officer asked about the exchange program. How was it, soldier? Good, sir. Made some friends. Learned some alien languages. They seemed to like Korean food.